Hi, I'm Alyssa Lopez, and I'll be going over the American class structure and how privilege will further drive a wedge in that divide in the context of healthcare for my Reteach project. Social class and healthcare inequities. Everyone should have fair and equal opportunity to be at their highest level of health. All right, this is health equity. Social class and the various components of it, like wealth, income, education, play a role in our healthcare access and outcomes. And I like how the book points out specifically that people in poverty suffer serious deprivation, highlighting the fact that lower socioeconomic status will lead to poor health access. And this privilege will further amplify the disparities and disadvantages associated with healthcare. We're going to start seeing that those in the higher percents are going to be having the longer lifespans, while those in the bottom are going to be suffering towards our end of lives a lot more. And I do like how the book provided this figure that showed that poverty was going down dramatically and amazingly, but they also incorporate with the figure that 1 in 12 Americans do not have the income necessary to support their basic needs. And that means someone you know isn't having the access to the proper health care that they need or other things for their quality of life. So let's address some of the barriers to health equity. There was a review recently done just in 2025 this year by Chen, and this systemic review highlights the barriers of health equity, showing how a lack of insurance coverage, high out of pocket cost, prior authorization delays, and social determinants of health such as income, education, and geography disproportionately affect low social class families, and that includes our low income families and minorities. It stresses the persistent inequities despite policy efforts like the Affordable Care Act, and explores how structural racism and cultural biases further impede access and outcomes for disadvantaged groups. We're going to see a big theme in our lower socioeconomic classes is a lot more minorities, and due to this structural racism that we see in America, it's not helping them get any closer to closing these healthcare gaps. And so socioeconomic status and healthcare access among older adults is also being affected. This is another mini review done in 2020 that bridged socioeconomic status with healthcare access and healthy aging, showing a clear gradient where lower socioeconomic status led to reduced healthcare utilization and poor health outcomes as they aged and progressed in life. And it underscored the financial barriers and service availabilities and the cyclical relationship between poverty, limited access, and worsening health. Evidence from diverse countries was also used in this study, which I thought was really cool, showing that the findings are pretty comparable, and they reinforce the idea that wealth and access and health access go hand in hand with this disparity that we see in poor health outcomes in lower socioeconomic statuses and minorities. And this is global, but this is a huge issue in the US, and it shows that it's comparable. So, this is the little quick activity that I'm going to make us do. And so I want you to pick one and be honest. And we're going to see how privilege and access affects us in this hypothetical situation. Now, of course, there's only three options. So the odds of you picking the one you think it is probably right. But please stick with the one you truly chose and sit there and think about what you would do in this position, or are you in this position now? How are you going to address it in the future? I know for myself, I am in the lower middle range, and I always think about how in the future I need to find ways to further close that gap between me and those in higher socioeconomic statuses. So, you broke a bone and someone offers you to call you an ambulance. Now, for me personally, this has happened before. And I looked at them like they were crazy and I said, no, you're driving me. So, low socioeconomic status is something that I was in at the time. And so, yeah, financial barriers and lack of insurance amplified those delays to the hospital. And they reduced access to timely emergency services because, no, I'm not going in an ambulance. But We see that in middle socioeconomic status, out of pocket expenses from the ambulance trip are present, but they're going to be manageable. And overall, the timely transport was greater for you in health outcomes, but there could be that potential extra stress and cost to the insurance navigation. And we don't necessarily want those outcomes either, because stress will not help with the recovery of whatever you just went through. But for a high socioeconomic status group, comprehensive insurance coverage minimized that financial burden and stress for you. You had nothing to worry about. It was a no-brainer. You had quick and smooth transport that facilitated immediate care and better health outcomes. And during the hospital visit, how is this going to affect you as well? For low socioeconomic status, we see limited access to specialists and diagnostic services. And there's those significant out of pocket costs straight out the bat, leading to delayed or foregone care. If I see that something's going to cost me over a couple $100, I'm going to say thank you, but no thank you, at least as a college student as well. But of course, you're also going to see fewer resources to navigate these complex insurance processes. For our middle socioeconomic status, diagnostic tools are available, but may require navigation assistance through insurance and care systems. And there's moderate financial burden due to copays and deductibles, but you're going to learn to get through it and it'll pass. For a high socioeconomic status, this is a breeze. You have easy access to patient advocates and top specialists, and this leads to advanced diagnostics and treatments that are readily available for you. And insurance complexities are handled efficiently with professional support. You're not the one doing all your own business, so you don't have any stress involved with the recovery. You're just getting better. Now, for my little empathy story, I did want to talk about my grandfather. He is an immigrant in this country, came over in the early 70s, later 60s. And I like how the book points out that poverty remains concentrated in race and ethnicity. My grandfather, being from his background, he has had a hard time getting access to the things he needs, getting jobs. His English is pretty broken despite being here for so long, and there's only so much he could do. His jobs let him go, and he ended up being unemployed for quite some time, living off of Social Security and whatever he could. And then he got diagnosed with pelvic cancer. At the time, my grandfather was married to my grandmother for about 50 years. And they had to divorce in order for my grandfather to receive chemotherapy. Due to being in the small town that he was in Nevada, the nearest chemo was an hour away, and he had no access to any type of government aid or any type of insurance that would cover this care. He had to then divorce her and move in with my family so that, in the eyes of the state, he could qualify for Arizona's access insurance and be able to receive the life-saving care that allows me to still have my grandfather today. It's heartbreaking to know that in the eyes of the state, in that union, it had to be broken for him, my grandmother, just to save his life and for him to still have her and for her to still have him. And this is not the only case that this has happened with, but this is just my personal story. And I don't think, with where we are as a country and how amazing we are as America, we should be allowing this type of thing to happen. No old person should have to divorce the love of their life just to receive life-saving care, because that's the day he graduated chemo. And without that chemotherapy, we would have been planning his funeral instead of the party. And so I want you to just take away some things. Social class critically impacts healthcare access and health outcomes, reinforcing inequality that already exists. Privilege creates lasting wedges and opportunities for health across generations. Multi-level policy, community, and healthcare delivery interventions are needed to address this. And I encourage everyone to try and not only personally advocate, but collectively advocate for your communities for equitable healthcare access. Some questions I want to leave you with. Consider the role of privilege in healthcare and what responsibilities do individuals and communities, policymakers hold to bridge these gaps. And what is one action you can take after today's presentation to advocate for more equitable healthcare access? Here's my references. And I hope you guys continue fighting to address the healthcare inequities within our country.